Welcome to Crossroads. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how the Chinese military is threatening Taiwan ahead of its elections in ways that are interfering with the Taiwanese elections. Xi Jinping, the head of the CCP, openly told Joe Biden that he's planning to take over Taiwan. He's suggesting there's nothing we can do about it. And also, the Chinese Communist Party's military harassment is being done in a way specifically to influence Taiwanese voters. I'm broadcasting live from Taiwan right now. I'll be here all week. And right now, again, the CCP leader Xi Jinping, he's openly telling the United States that he's going to take over Taiwan. Now, this takes place as Taiwan is in the midst of a critical election. It could see either a pro-America party or a pro-CCP party, literally, take power in this country. The Chinese Communist Party, meanwhile, is now aggressively trying to interfere with the Taiwanese presidential elections, both through military threats and through soft power attacks and other things like, for example, manipulation of information. The outcome of all of this, very soon, could determine the future of this island nation and also the future of whether we go to war, possibly with the Chinese Communist Party. Now, let me show you this first. The South China Morning Post is saying that Chinese President Xi Jinping paid tribute to Mao Zedong, the former head of the CCP, and hailed his political teachings on Tuesday, the 130th anniversary of the late leader's birth, saying mainland China will surely be unified with Taiwan in the future. Now, briefly on this, Mao Zedong, the former head of the CCP, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party through all of its major, cultural revolution, movements that established the rule of the CCP over China. Mao Zedong had a policy to try to take Taiwan. Now, during that time, Taiwan, of course, had the U.S. defending it. We had the Taiwan Strait crisis. And at least twice, it looked like it was very close. The CCP was going to try it. America stopped that from happening. Now, right now, Xi Jinping is saying this in his bid, it seems, to realize the dream of Mao Zedong in taking over Taiwan. He said the complete reunification of our motherland is an overall trend, a righteous cause, and the common aspiration of the people. Our motherland must be reunited, and it will surely be reunited. And he continues by stating, we firmly oppose anyone using any means to separate Taiwan from China. Now, I should note, Taiwan is separate from China. It's its own country. It's literally having a presidential election right now, and the CCP is threatening to conquer it. If the Chinese Communist Party already controlled Taiwan, why would they need to conquer it, right? But aside from that, of course, South China Morning Post says that earlier this year, Xi Jinping, told cadres to prepare for the worst case and most extreme scenario, with Beijing and Washington struggling to manage their disputes over issues such as Taiwan, the South China Sea, technology, and trade. And it notes as well that, quote, Beijing has described the front runner of the Taiwanese elections right now, William Lai Ching-te, of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, and his running mate, Tsai Be-kim, as supporters of independence. Now, again, Taiwan is an independent country by every single means, other than, for example, the United States and many other countries, unfortunately, not recognizing it as such. This actually was the U.S. policy for a very long time. Taiwan was called Free China. The Chinese Communist Party's rule over mainland China was called Communist China. And Free China used to be regarded as the official government of all of China, at least by the United States. This changed heavily under former President Carter, who notably got rid of America's policy on defending Taiwan when Congress was not able to properly challenge it. The Supreme Court refused to hear it, and through a very clever means of bypassing Congress, essentially the U.S. policy on China and over Taiwan was changed. Now, as Taiwan is holding its election, the current party that's the incumbent right now, the Democratic Progressive Party, they believe in maintaining Taiwan's independence from the Chinese Communist Party. They oppose the idea of the CCP threatening to take over Taiwan, and they're very much resisting this. one of their main policies is to maintain this, Taiwanese independence, and make sure the CCP does not conquer the country. The main challenger to the Democratic Progressive Party is the Kuomintang, or Kuomintang, however you pronounce it. That party, ironically, was the one under Chiang Kai-shek, who of course waged war against the Chinese Communist Party and was seen as the government in exile after they fled to the island of Formosa, which became Taiwan, as we know it today. And the KMT these days has transformed from being the party that was against the Chinese Communist Party to being the party that wants to, at the very least, move the country much closer to China, reopen trade, and even surrender certain parts of the country to China, the Chinese Communist Party, such as some of the island areas where they want to make, like, international zones, is one of the ways they're framing it. Now, the CCP has drawn a line in the sand, and it's saying that if any candidate in the Taiwanese elections supports independence, meaning that the leaders believe that Taiwan should remain an independent country, which it currently is by every single means, then they will take that as an act of war. And they're suggesting that if a country believes that the leadership does not hold that, they don't believe in independence, and they believe in reunification like the Kuomintang does, then they will accept that, of course, as a legitimate political party, it seems. And of course, that's one of the reasons why the CCP, as things currently are happening right now, and again, I'm in Taiwan currently, the CCP is, of course, trying to interfere with the Taiwanese elections through various means. Throughout the week, I'll be covering some of the different pieces of this. Today, I want to focus specifically on the military threats. Now, as all of this is happening, Xi Jinping openly told Joe Biden, apparently to his face, that he is planning to take over Taiwan. NBC News had the article on it and said this: Xi told Biden in a group meeting attended by a dozen American and Chinese officials that China's preference is to take Taiwan peacefully, not by force, the official said. It notes that the Chinese leader Xi Jinping also referenced public predictions by U.S. military leaders who say that Xi plans to take Taiwan in 2025 or 2027, telling Biden that they were wrong because he has not set a time frame, according to the two current and one former official briefed on the meeting. Briefly on this, a lot of analysts, including myself, believe the CCP will do this before the U.S. elections. While Joe Biden is still president of the United States, that would be the ideal time, especially when the U.S. is embroiled in its own election process and, of course, the attempted impeachment of Joe Biden and the legal targeting of former President Donald Trump, the main contender of Biden. And also as the world is becoming embroiled in many different wars, which the U.S. also has to be involved with, which I've been talking about for a long time on the show, was part of the CCP plan to distract us as it tries to take Taiwan. In other words, everything is falling into place right now. Now, NBC notes that Chinese officials also asked in advance of the summit that Joe Biden make a public statement after the meeting saying that the U.S. supports China's goal of peaceful unification with Taiwan and does not support Taiwanese independence, they said. And good on them, it says the White House rejected the Chinese request. And by doing so is suggesting that, well, America might actually have to defend Taiwan if a conflict actually does take place. Now, it seems that the CCP is really serious about this right now. And given the many wars and conflicts the U.S. is now getting pulled into, there is again a window of time right now, a vulnerability where defense spending of the U.S. is very limited. Now, I've noted previously, remember the documentary I did called The Final War, that one of the Chinese Communist Party's guiding doctrines, and remember I talked about this before a lot of these conflicts had really started, Qin Canrong, one of the main advisors to Xi Jinping, has been saying that America is, its military is designed to fight and win two wars simultaneously. We have a military focused on the West Coast and one on the East Coast, and America has designed itself in a way to fight a two-front war against two main adversaries and win. Now, he's suggesting, and Xi Jinping appears to be following it, that if the CCP wants to do something that could potentially drag the United States into a war against China, or at the very least trigger America's, let's say, need to defend its allies, that they first need to get America involved in multiple wars, more than two. They were suggesting that one of those has to be a terror group, and they were suggesting that they should get America pulled into 4 separate wars. I will point to what's happening in the world right now. Russia is fighting a war with Ukraine. The U.S. backing of Ukraine and fighting that war is, well, possibly destroying the Russian military to a large extent, but by doing so, driving Russia closer to China. Russia's in a vulnerable state, and so they've been driven to work more closely with the Chinese Communist Party. They signed a no-limits agreement, notably. At the same time, America is draining its defense budget as we bankroll Ukraine in that war. Not all that money is actually going to defense. Some of that includes the U.S. even paying the pensions of Ukrainian officials and also doing like green projects to rebuild their cities. Now, as America is spending most of our defense budget on the war in Ukraine, that means our defense budget is limited elsewhere. So what else is happening? Well, now you have the war between Israel and Hamas, and the U.S. is, of course, supporting Israel in that. And at the same time, because Biden reopened funding for Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, the Iranian regime is now restarting global terrorism. And this includes, for example, attacking ships transporting shipping containers in the Red Sea and in other areas, the Horn of Africa, which is causing a shipping crisis. And so the United States is now diverting some of its military assets to try to maintain security for international shipping. At the same time, there's a possibility right now that Venezuela could invade Guyana, which is in South America on the northeast part of the country. Guyana is a very small country without a strong ability to defend itself. And Guyana, interestingly, just recently, I reported on it before, discovered one of the world's largest oil reserves, and they're poised to become one of the most wealthy nations on the face of the planet. Now, the Chinese Communist Party has already gotten a lot of the contracts to do the oil exploration and drilling there. And for them, I do believe personally that working with Venezuela would be easier than working just with Guyana, especially as you have other U.S. oil companies involved in that region as well. Now, if that happens, very likely you could see Lula in Brazil also back Venezuela in that war, which is pending right now. And as the U.S. is having to defend shipping lines all around the world, bankrolling Ukraine, supporting Israel, possibly fighting a terror war, dealing with Iran, reaching a state of 60% refinement on nuclear, potentially nuclear weapons, able to deploy nuclear weapons currently within about 2 weeks, which was a red line for Israel, invading notably Iran. And as we could possibly even get pulled into a war in Latin America, well, what's happening? The Chinese Communist Party is moving forward with its plans, as it is publicly stating, to take Taiwan possibly by force. That is where the world stands right now. And personally, I believe this, at least some of this was very likely by design. I've been reporting on the CCP's publicly stated goals to do exactly what is currently happening. And Taiwan now is going to become a focal point of this. Now, this being said, the Chinese Communist Party is talking about 2 possible avenues to take Taiwan. One of them is what they call peaceful reunification. And this means that essentially Taiwan just says, hey, China, take us over. We're yours, buddy. And peaceful reunification suggests you would have to have a political party that would favor Chinese rule over the island nation. Currently, again, the elections in Taiwan, and the elections are going to be held this weekend. I'll be here covering it live. The elections in Taiwan are going to determine whether that's the future of this country. The Kuomintang, one of the main rival parties to the current leadership, the DPP, has reunification, or at the very least a more positive view on the CCP, and at the very least trade deals, as one of its leading policies. They will publicly deny they believe in reunification, but of course the other party, the DPP, is framed as the one wanting to have of course, independence from China, whereas the Kuomintang does not want to have independence from China. It's one of the main narratives right now behind the Taiwanese election. And the CCP is, of course, saying the other option is non-peaceful reunification, i.e. military attack and invasion. But of course, the CCP doesn't want to call it that. They don't want to call it an invasion because they, of course, on paper claim that they own Taiwan already. I'd question again, if the CCP already owns Taiwan, if Taiwan's already under mainland China, then why would they have to conquer it in the first place? Why are they threatening it militarily? Why are they trying to get the United States to change its policies to not recognize Taiwan's independence if it's already said and done? It's because it's not said and done. Taiwan is very much an independent country, and the CCP is trying to undermine that. Now look, while Taiwan is again its own country with its own government, the CCP has drawn a line in the sand that if local politicians talk about separatism, i.e. they're saying Taiwan is a country, then this would trigger a non-peaceful takeover from the CCP. A very roundabout way of saying the CCP is threatening to invade and take over Taiwan using its military. So in other words, if a politician comes into power in Taiwan who is not in support of the CCP taking over the island, i.e. again that peaceful takeover or peaceful reunification, then the Chinese Communist Party will potentially resort to war. Now look, they've been saying this for a long time, but again, the current window of opportunity, the status of the United States, and the multiple wars existing in the world right now, which do appear to be escalating, this is a unfortunately ripe time for the CCP to make good on its agenda. Now look, of course, again, the anti-CCP party in Taiwan, which is currently in power. They've been in power close to 8 years now. That's the Democratic Progressive Party. Polling looks like they could win, but actually the margin of victory is becoming much thinner. And as things stand currently, again, I will be covering the elections in Taiwan. Again, I'm here currently reporting here live. It does appear that it could go either way, frankly. Now you have the Kuomintang, you have the Democratic Progressive Party, you also have a third party, the TPP, which claims to be more of a moderate party, but in terms of voting would be expected to vote more in line with the Kuomintang. And given the way things go, whether DPP wins again and maintains their status of not, surrendering the country to mainland China, if the election works out where the Kuomintang or the TPP get enough votes, that means they do control the legislature. The Taiwanese election system works in a way that percentage of votes also determines, how many seats you get in the legislature, and that could also deeply affect the way things go. I'll be explaining all this a bit more as we go forward, because again, I am covering the elections here, and I'll be giving updates on it. Now, the pro-CCP Kuomintang is likely going to win enough votes to have influence at the very least over the country's legislature, and that could actually impact things, again, really quite a bit. And so, folks, again, I will be covering all of this over the following week, and I'll be here, of course, live. Now, all of this being said, right, before we get into all this, I'm going to go deeper into it. We have a new documentary called The Real Story of January 6th, Part 2, not the first one, which is now available on Epoch TV. You can watch it right now on Epoch TV, EpochTV.com. Link in the description and in the live chat. Let me show you the trailer for that.
Calling the January 6th investigation the biggest investigation in FBI history.
There are more than 1,100 arrests, and they show no signs of slowing down.
When you take an oath, you have to abide by it.
They're just going to identify you on video, arrest you, and then figure out what the evidence is after that.
Those involved must be held accountable.
He's an innocent man, and he has been punished for something that he never did. Every day you wake up and you're like, how did I get out of bed today?
You have to stay away from the word patriot now because that's a terrorist organization.
We interviewed 2 whistleblowers from the FBI.
I sacrificed my dream job to share this information with the American people.
That siege was criminal behavior, plain and simple, and it's behavior that we, the FBI, view as domestic terrorism.
We started with death threats, the hate mail, I don't care what they do to me, but I do care what they do to my family.
Our family struggles every day.
And it's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is.
Again, that documentary is currently available on Epoch TV, epochtv.com. And again, folks, check it out, epochtv.com. We have a lot of other documentaries, special features, the entire live show that I do 5 days a week. All of that for subscribers available, and so check it out. We also have the first documentary on, of course, the real story January 6th, also available there. So if you haven't seen it yet, also watch it. I do believe these documentaries are changing the narrative, and I believe they're very important to see. So again, link in the description, link in the live chat, and that says jump over exclusively to Epoch TV for the rest of the episode. I'll see you there.